Our topic today, planning 2021. How do you build your customer programs, your advocacy programs? How do you get executive buy-in? So we have Alina Bryan from Asana that she's done many roles in the advocacy realm, and she'll introduce herself in a minute, but she's going to talk a bit about how she builds her programs and hopefully how she gets executive buy-in. But we have an executive on board also. We have Anna Convery from Radware, the CMO of Radware, and she can share in her different roles, VP Marketing, CMO, how she structured the program to management, but also how did her teams build the programs and get her buy-in for those. So we have two sides of this discussion, which is great. Anna, can you just give a few words about yourself, and Karina, and I'll start.
Sure. This is Anna Convery, everyone, and I'm delighted to join the team today in this topic. I think it's a very timely topic, since this is, of course, the season when we look at our budgets and our plans for 2021. As Gal said, I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Radware. Radware is a cybersecurity company, and I am, despite the Irish accent, I am sitting in Atlanta, Georgia today, which is home for me. And I have been with Radware for 4 years. Before that, I had CMO roles, also with technology companies, everything from robotic process automation to analytics to customer experience to speech analytics, all around the globe. So delighted to join you today and looking forward to hearing more from Kalina and from Gal as well.
Thank you.
Awesome, Anna. Hey everyone, my name's Kalina. I head up customer advocacy at Asana. Delighted to be here. I'll be speaking to you guys about just building the customer advocacy programs from scratch, figuring out, what's the best route to go, especially if you're a one person show or if you have a team of 2 or 3. Really going into detail of how to be successful in no matter what circumstances you're in. I'm based in Los Angeles right now. I'm actually having my kitchen remodeled, so if you hear bumping and noises, that's going on. It's going to be a beautiful kitchen soon. But like I said, delighted to be here.
Great. Okay, so a bit of agenda and housekeeping notes and whatnot. So first of all, for those of you who haven't yet been on our webinars are interactive. There's a Q&A button for you to put in questions during the session. We also have Noah Wivers, which is from Advocate Marketing team. So feel free to just ask questions, and we'll push those to Anna and to Kalina as we go. We'll also have Q&A stops. The chat is open, etc. What we'll do is we'll start with Kalina just to talk about how she actually builds her programs, and then Anna might also relate to that when she talks about the CMO perspective, but she also has her own vision on this whole topic. I'll just touch a bit about building a business case in a more structured manner, and ideally we'll all touch how you add value to your programs and tie them to revenue. And by 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern, we go back to your work. So just very quickly, what we're doing, we have a monthly webinar at Advocate. We aspire to build a category and have more people in the community. So there's a Slack community. If you're not in that community, but you're a customer marketer or advocacy manager, just let us know, and Noah or myself or anybody from the team can add you to that. We have an expert zone. We have a job board. So either if you're recruiting people to customer marketing advocacy, or you're looking for a job in customer advocacy and marketing, just go to our website, find all these resources. They are for the community. A bit about the trends we see in the market. So, and I think I saw Amy Mills from Forrester join us, but basically, Forrester just released this in September. Lisa talked about the year of the customer marketer. We definitely see that in jobs and roles. We see more. If you look at here, 2,000, almost 3,000 roles in customer advocacy in the United States just for the last few months. You can see the trend in the market from product being the main differentiator, the main influence of decisions, to references and testimonials becoming now the main influence. So everything ties together to a trend that is all about customers' influence on ROI, customer marketing looking at more than just advocacy, expansion, lifecycle marketing, journey marketing, retention. I think Anna also will do that in Radler as well. Um, we see more positions, teams grow, and analyst coverage is becoming more holistic. So when we talk about holistic, basically, and again, this is going to touch the programs that we're going to talk about today. What you can have different programs, right? Advocacy or customer marketing programs could be specific, such as reviews or references or customer stories, but they could be more generalistic. Maybe if you're doing upsell, retention marketing, if you're supporting onboarding, if you have a community and you have inspiration to also engage with the community itself. So there's a lot, all of these pillars can become programs. And each program should, of course, have some kind of objective, KPIs, ROI, ideally, at least in some of them, and they should all tie together. That's how we look at customer marketing. That's how we think when you think about planning 2021 or planning your activities. How does everything tie together for a better customer experience and for the companies themselves? Specifically in CrowdVocate, we tie them together because we like to engage customers as part of their journey and connect that to all the data the company has, and engage with customers in multiple domains, touch points, and manners, kind of tie all that to revenue, and tie all that to insights about your champions, your advocates in your journey. But enough about CrowdVocate and about what we see in the market. We're going to run a poll, so feel free to answer, especially if you haven't done so before. 10 people will win books, or you can choose 1 hour, consultancy with us. And I think with that, we're basically done. And Kalina, I'll let you take the stand.
All right. So I'd like this to be super conversational, so feel free to ask questions. But I was actually thinking about this a lot last night. I'm working on strategy right now for Asana. And one of the big questions for me is whenever I start a job and I start a new segment in customer marketing or customer advocacy, I try to do a little bit of research and go on a lot of customer calls, like a customer journey call with all the sales teams, and try to get as many one-to-one meetings with customers as I possibly can, for multiple reasons. One, to understand where do we stand with our organization, what is our goals, what are we trying to accomplish for that year. But then three, really understanding the pain and the needs of our customers. When you really get a chance to talk to your customer, they're very honest as to what they love about your product and what they actually need from you to grow. And based on that information, I write down all of the different things that I see that we're missing. And then also really looking at when you come into an organization, there's already going to be certain things put in place. I think the best thing to do is really understand, well, what's working and what's the opportunity to grow. A lot of the times you don't have to actually wipe out current programs that are already in place. A lot of the times you can build on top of those programs, or you can work in parallel with whoever is running that program. And so looking at things, whether you have a community or a customer advisory board, you name it, that's kind of where I start at the baseline. And just looking at, you don't want to recreate something that's already been designed. You don't want to have duplicate work, but also you want to make sure that your programs are going to be meaningful coming in. So looking at that is a big thing, but then also understanding where's the company. Are you working at a startup? If you're working at a startup, you need to understand most of the time it's all about brand. It's all about, we need to go enterprise, up market. And in order to do that, we need big logos and we need, people that are going to advocate for us and do reference calls. That's one thing. But if you look at mid-sized companies or, full on, companies that have went public, they're looking at a different strategy. They're looking at adoption. They're looking at retention. They're really honing in on how do we build better executive relationships in order to increase our sales and increase the current deals that you already have. So it's a different layout. So I would say you have to think about where do you stand within your organization? What type of company did you pick? And what's the real need that's going to set you up for success when building your programs for 2021? And with that being said, one of my favorite things about customer marketing and customer advocacy is really building that executive relationship. I think that it's the heart of customer marketing. everybody wants to have raving customer fans in regards to the end users. But when you really think about how do you have a C-level executive or a VP or head, whatever it might be, how do you have those individuals that will speak highly of your product and speak highly of you as a partner, and no matter what scenery they're in? And I think that it's tricky, right? You have to have a lot of psychological understanding as to not selling to that executive, but understanding that you are helping them and they understand that if they give you their time, that it's mutual. And I think that understanding that landscape helps you build your programs. So I know personally for me, one of my biggest goals is designing another customer advisory board globally for my new company, and really honing in, well, if we create this customer advisory board, number one, who do we want on that board? Is it only going to be a certain category of people? You know, are they only going to be maybe in the CMO category? Are they only going to be C-level executives? Are we going to open it up to directors? What does that look like? And then when we pick that roster, you know, is that going to be large enterprise companies? Is it only going to be the Amazons of the world, or can we look at startups? Can we look at individuals that aren't even in SaaS? Those are big questions that come up to me. But then also, tying customer marketing into revenue is extremely important. And I think that that is something that we need to really get better at as an industry or a segment, because a lot of the times we're putting in a lot of money. You know, you're asking for budget, and a lot of the times people are saying, well, why do you need headcount? You know, you're just you're producing these case studies, you're doing it already. Why do you need someone else to help you with those case studies? And it's hard to really show that return, you know. And then a lot of the times you're doing these events, and you know the event looks fancy, but at the same time you're budgeting, saying I need $20,000 this quarter, I need $15,000 this next quarter. And I think, you know, you have to start to ask yourself, you know, how can I start to tie this into revenue? If you have certain events, if you have certain case studies or certain collateral, how can you tie that into potential deals or expansion opportunities? What's going to be your metrics is what I've been asking myself. If I'm asking for a certain amount of budget for the quarter, or if I'm asking for a certain amount of headcount, before asking for that headcount, I really outline, here's where we're trying to go at this company. I can guarantee a percentage of, you know, new executive advocates, and I can guarantee that this program will bring X amount of revenue because of these logos. And if we can nurture them this way, you know, would ultimately turn that into a certain amount of pipeline or a certain amount of expansion opportunities. And I think that that goes a lot better with executives, because they can actually understand, oh, you're not just asking for all of this fluffy money to send gifts. You know, like you know, you don't want to be that person that's paying $100 for an Ember mug, but you have no results to show for it. But at the same time, you want to understand that that's a touch point as to how that's going to nurture that relationship deeper. And so when it's time for you to, you know, secure that, you know, $1 million deal, it's not just about that AE trying to get a conversation going, but they actually have a relationship based on the programs that you have built within customer marketing. There's different touch points. And I think that that has, you know, put me up for success. I think that really understanding and articulating where's the need of this program, how can this program generate additional revenue, and how can it help not just one organization, but how can it help multiple segments? How can it help sales, customer success, marketing, you name it? And also, how can it ultimately generate positive brand awareness for your company? And I think that when you ask yourself these questions, you would feel obviously more confident to ask for what you're looking for, because it's not just a hope and a wish. It's literally telling an executive, I want to build you this. And if I can build this well for you, I can generate this amount of money for you. But in order to do that, I need X amount of dollars and I need X amount of people. But, you know, and if they say, hey, I can't give you that, then you can tell them honestly that, well, I can't give you this program. So I think that that's a really nice strategy, and it's something that gets critical thinking going. And I think that it allows you to be really good at your job, because you've consciously thought about what you want to do, and how to actually get it done successfully. And I'll pause there.
Okay, so I think my first question would be, when you build those programs, and again, I'm inviting everybody to ask questions, and soon we'll also move to Anna's session. I mean, when you build your programs, do you focus on a specific initiative, a specific program, like you mentioned, tabs, try to get that approved then move to initiative number 2 and get that approved, or you tie it all together and you give them a vision for what you see on 2021?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this is interesting because I think that people should look at, you have your job description and you love it, and maybe your job description says build a community, build a reference program, build case studies. But then when you go into the job and you do maybe 2 months of really understanding what's going on, it's never going to be the same as your job description. You have to build it and bring in your creativity and really step back and say, what has worked well for me in the past? And obviously, you can't do the same thing you did in the past, but understand those learnings is what I always try to do. And then I look at the full vision. And I try to say, in a perfect world, we can definitely build, let's say, a community, and let's say a customer advisory board, but I try to break it down in pillars. So my first pillar is always executive relationships. My second pillar is always community development. And my third pillar is always strategy. And strategy can mean multiple things for you, but strategy in a sense of, if your goal is retention and adoption, how are you going to get there long term? Not just with those 2 programs, but as you see success in like the first 2 pillars, you continuously have to keep scaling. So that strategy is a key component. And then within those 3 pillars, I try to outline a full ideal goal of all these 3 programs, but ultimately putting in a timeline in the end. So it's basically, let's just say, mind mapping. I try to free spiritly write down, in a perfect world, if I can build anything, this is what I would like to do. And then once I lay it out, I understand, okay, well, building a customer advisory board, you definitely can't do that in 3 months. This is more of a 6-month layout. And maybe it's building a community, but let's say you have to have a certain tool. Maybe you're looking at CrowdKit, and CrowdKit is giving you pitches as to how they can actually help you. And then implementation, maybe that implementation only takes 1 month, but giving that time frame, that helps me understand, well, here's my realistic timeline. And when looking at that timeline, I can definitely understand that I can give you results at a certain particular time if I start X, Y, and Z. And then once I see results in this section, I propose that we start on pillar 2. But then looking at that whole timeline, that can be 6 months, or that can be the full strategy for 2021. But it's really understanding, you never want to start one little thing and then, you start 1 month on that, and then next month you start another thing. You want to make sure you thoughtfully sit back on it and you actually sketch that out and present that to your executive board. So, 6 months down the line, when they say, well, how is this really going? I don't know what you're doing. They can actually understand why you're taking those steps, because they've seen that presentation, months ahead of time before you actually start doing the work. And when you have certain platforms that you're asking for budget for, it's not a big surprise. They're understanding that, hey, 6 months ago, Kalina told me that we would actually look at X, Y, and Z product. This makes sense because we've achieved X, Y, and Z goal. So I would say building out your vision and being fun with it, right? You want to understand also personally and selfishly for yourself, who do you want to be and what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to be the expert in 2021? And how is that going to tie into your day job? Because you're spending 50 hours a week on a program, you might as well really love it, and you might as well be able to brand it as your own, especially if you give your all and it's excellent. So I would say start on the base board, and not just one program, but build out what you want for the year as your vision, and then pitch that vision.
I love that last topic, like who do you want to be and which program do you want to brand yourself on? That's a very good, that's connecting passion into the programs. And yeah, you just need to get executive buy-in, which Anna will soon share how. We have one question for you, Kalina, and then I think we'll move to Anna. It's a question from Jennifer. So outside CAB, customer advisory boards, what strategies have you used to engage with executives and your accounts?
That's a good one. So I'm going to do a pre-COVID and a post-COVID answer, or I guess before COVID happened and now that we're living in COVID. So at my previous company, I was tasked to build our customer advisory board, but also our community, which was a combination of in-person events. I would call them flows, and we would actually pick all of our metropolitan cities and really look at, okay, where did we have customers and where did we have potential prospects? And I guess you could call that like customer meetups. Was the biggest strategy that I think I found success in, because Number one, we were able to give surprise and delight to our executive customers. We would spin it up and actually have a really nice rooftop bar with drinks and cocktails, or cocktails and food. It was like a 3-course meal, and we would have a fireside chat with a thought leader that would really highlight not just our product, but really highlight their journey as to how they became that executive, which I felt was really valuable, because people were able to take additional values out of things other than just a product. But then in the end, we were able to have a percentage of happy customers come into that environment, but also late stage prospects come into that environment. And instead of being naturally sold to the generic way of cold calling and sales talking to you, they actually got to talk to key executives over a cocktail and understand that, hey, it's not just a product, but here's the environment that we're going to give you if you go with our product long term and if you become a partner. I think that worked really well, and that was something that put customer marketing on the map, because we were then able to tie in. If that deal, that prospect came to that event, and then a month or so later they closed, that was a tie-in as to why that revenue closed. And I think that really, like I said, it really showed that customer marketing isn't just case studies. It's not just writing. It's not just giving out a reference, but it's actually bringing in the right people and creating a solid experience that you can't get anywhere else. Now that we're living in the times of COVID, I migrated that whole landscape into a virtual happy hour meetup experience. And it was different, but I think that at the time that we did it, we were sending out happy hour champagne to the individuals that registered, like the first 25 registrants, but we still kept that same baseline of thought leadership, having the fireside chat. And this time it was really nice, because we had individuals that were executives that were parents, and they still had their day job, and then they had a certain budget that they had to conquer, and then they still had to plan for 2021, along with no longer having to be able to like leave their kid for a few hours into school, to now all of a sudden they became the teacher, et cetera. So bringing that in actually still gave us a interesting touch point. And I think that it made us real, and it made our program, I guess, engaging, because people were still seeking. It was like a therapy session, but at the same time, understanding product and understanding how to actually accomplish goals. So I would say that having that customer meetup experience and really scoping out thought leadership, scoping out surprise and delight, and scoping out a sense of community has worked really well. Because it's not that just generic email. It's not that just generic, hey, my product is the best, so you should buy this. But it's sort of a mental thought process that I think gets people to want to engage with you more.
Oh, okay. So we have another question from Oliver, but actually I want to head off to and have Anna kind of share her thoughts, actually from the maybe other side of the house. So when you have your teams come to you and basically, and Oliver will answer your question later on. So when you have teams come to you and basically say, hey, this is our plan for next year. These are the programs we're focusing on. This is why we think they are effective. This is the budget we need. I mean, how do you guide them, ideally, to make the best pitch, to build the right plan that would resonate not just with yourself, but also with the CEO or the CFO or the sales VP or whatever, the customer success officer, etc. So I think we would love to hear a perspective of the CMO.
Absolutely, Gal. So it's very interesting to actually listen to Kalina as she was going through her conversation, because in fact, what she went through is a lot of the things that I look for. The first thing I would say to everyone is it's very important that you understand the strategic goals of the organization you work with, and how the program or the activity you're promoting is in fact going to connect into that, how it's going to connect to the greater goals and strategy of the company. Why do I say that? Because when you're talking to me as CMO, remember, you may be selling to me to invest in a program, but I also have to sell to others. I have to sell to my boss, the CEO. I have to sell to the CFO. I have to sell to the chief sales officer. And so all along this chain, it's almost like a baton passing. So whenever my team comes to me, I'm looking for How are they connected to what we are trying to do as a company? How is what they propose to me going to further those strategic goals of the organization? And how are we going to do the right thing by the company by making the right decisions? So what do I do next? I ask them to explain the program that they have in front of me. I ask them to explain, what is this program? Where does it fit in the strategic goals? What is the impact going to be? And why should we do it? Because if they can't articulate it to me, then it cannot be articulated to a non-marketer. And that's a very important thing. Always understand the language of the person you're talking to. And one thing I will say as a piece of advice to everybody on the call, in marketing, I find we often get enamored with our jargon. By the way, it's true in technology companies. We love to throw out our buzzwords. Don't get too enamored with bringing the minutiae into the first phase of presenting a major program to an executive. Make sure they understand the business aspect of it and the impact. The other part of this that I would advise you to in this first phase is, remember, most executives are very busy. And if they're not busy, they should be busy. But they're very busy and they've got a lot of things going on. You could be coming in to present to me, as my team did when we were talking about our customer advocacy programs. You could be presenting to me in a day when I'm preparing for a board meeting, or a day when I'm working with investors, or a day when I'm working with our sales team, or a day where I'm working with finance. And there's a lot going on. So to get my attention and to get my focus, it needs to be a very clear, very well thought out, very articulate program. The next thing is establish impact. Kalina said this, she's absolutely spot on. We are, I hate to say it, typical executives are headline grabbers. We like to have snackable content as we talk about marketing. We like to have the content presented to us so that we get to the point very quickly. So give me the headline. What is the impact going to be? Establish impact, very, very important. Who are we going to affect? What is it that this initiative is going to do? Why should we do it? And why should it be prioritized above everything else? And then I want you to tell me, if this initiative is important and successful, what is after this? What's the next part of the journey? Because we don't do isolated projects anymore. We don't do what I call random acts of marketing. Those don't work. Programs that work are journeys. You look at the customer advocacy that we're talking about today, everybody talks about wanting to be customer-centric. Everybody talks about wanting to be, wanting to wow the customers, wanting to delight the customers. It's easy to say, it's different to do. And when you start to talk about these programs, let's talk about the journey, let's talk about what we're going to do. So establish impact. Then, as soon as you establish impact, tell me what it's going to cost. Tell me the investment needed. I need to know what the dollars are we're going to spend. I need to know the people that we need to execute this program, including their knowledge and skill sets. I need to know the processes that exist today and the processes that need to be changed so that we can implement this through the organization. We as marketers, as customer advocates, we do not work in a silo. We are connectors. We connect into the sales team, into the SE team, into the product team, into the research and development team, into the finance team. So make sure that we understand the processes, the connection points, the handoffs, and how we're going to make it all work. And then, of course, in this investment piece, tell me also what systems or platforms that I need to invest in to make this happen. And of course, the platform investment is a great one because that's where we start talking about scale and impact and how we're going to make this be meaningful across the board and how we're going to get this journey to move ahead. Customer marketing, customer advocacy is a great area for this investment because our customers are very important, and to acquire customers is expensive. To keep them happy is important because they will be long-term advocates of our products and our portfolio going forward, and they are wonderful references. The best person to sell to a new customer is your customer, and if we do this well, this is why these programs should get priority. Next, measure. As executives, we always want to be able to summarize the impact of what it is we're doing. So as you present your program or you're really pushing for your initiative and this investment, tell me what the impact is going to be in numbers. Tell me what you can measure in hard numbers. Tell me the softer areas of impact and how you can also measure those. I want to know the results I'm going to expect. And I also want a breakdown of the results and the milestones as I go through this. Kalina said earlier, one of the things you need to do is to be able to share what you're doing with the program as you go forward. So understand the results, present them, then break it down into the journey, into the key milestones and what metrics you're going to present. And then, of course, as something Kalina said, and I had it written down here to talk to you all, is remember you are associated with your program. You are building your reputation. You're building yourself within that organization. And this is a chance for you to put your name against a program, to take ownership, to push it forward. As an executive, I absolutely love people management. And I love people who step forward and who put their shoulder to the wheel and who take on a project, and I can trust that they will see it through. So it's important that you as a person know that you're associated with what you're advocating for, but also this is how you build your brand and your reputation within that organization and as you move forward in your career. I will also say that, one of the things we do at Radware is we measure in two ways. We measure direct impact because revenue is very important. We also measure indirect impact. So we may, for example, through a customer advocacy program, show how we're improving our revenue numbers directly from that program. But we also know that that program is also going to have an indirect impact in many other areas, such as, for example, the ability to get press releases or the ability to have a very successful customer reference program. My last piece of advice to everyone is communicate. And I'm going to really emphasize this. I'll emphasize it because it's actually one of the areas that I struggle with as a person throughout my career, which is sometimes I'm running so hard to get it done, I forget to stop and tell everybody what we have done. So build a plan to communicate. Communicate frequently and communicate in a way that it is consumable again. Remember back to my first part when you're explaining to your executive the program that you're advocating for, to put it in the language that they understand, to don't suffocate it in jargon. Make sure that you're not diving into minutiae too quick that will really, really lose the whole perspective. But also give them enough detail to know that you know what you're talking about. That's important, confidence. But please remember to communicate. Communicate often, communicate frequently, show the numbers, but communicate genuinely. I want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to hear where we're making progress and how we're hitting those milestones. I want to hear the bad, where something's happening, perhaps an external market force. This year, we all have had to pivot rather quickly with the COVID pandemic. That's something that we can't control, but how are we pivoting and what's going on? And is it having an impact? And if so, can we offset that impact? And then my ugly is always something that I always say is something we're responsible for. We didn't execute well. We didn't deliver properly. We didn't pay attention to our A/B testing. That to me is ugly. And then how are we going to change it? So communicate genuinely, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and always have a plan for when you have those things that may not be working as well. And make sure that your data is strong. Make sure your data comes from a common platform for the rest of the company to understand. If you do these things, what you'll do is you'll present a very comprehensive program to your executives. It'll be very thorough in your thinking. You'll connect to the executive strategy, you'll connect to the company strategy, and you'll show the depth and knowledge and expertise to not only execute the program, but to measure it and to show results. And you'll show the vision of where it goes to today, where it goes to tomorrow, and where it goes to in the next year. I think in 6-month, 12-month, and 18-month programs. I want to know the 6-month near-term impact. I want to know the next 6 to 12 months, the maturing of the program. And then I want to know after 12 months how it stands on its feet and it runs and it executes and it grows and it scales. So it's very important to think further than just a few weeks ahead. So Gal, that's how I think, that's what I look for when a program is presented. And by the way, that's how my CEO thinks when I present the program to him.
Great, thank you. I love the 6, 12, and 18 framework. I think it's something that everybody should adopt. I mean, showing results this year, right? 6 months, something quick. Talking about what's going to happen within a year, and like you mentioned, how does it run by it? I think runs by itself, but right. How does it run by itself the year after? So a few questions for that. So, I mean, I would challenge you and say that CFOs have a different mindset. All they care about is the bottom line, and whether you present it to them or your team presents it to you and you need to present it to them. they're going to ask, okay, but why are we investing in another resource? Whether that resource is another person on your team or the customer on your team, whether that resource is a platform, whether that resource is, like Lena mentioned, an event at whatever, $30,000 because you want to have people do X, Y, Z. I mean, when you come to that discussion with you're a marketer, so you understand marketing, but the rest of the people in the room, the rest of the C-level management team who don't really think marketing, how could your teams basically help you, give you ammo to kind of present also the numbers, the values to other people in the executive committee, if you will?
Yeah, it's a good question, Gal. In fact, presenting to the CFO and to almost all executives is quite similar. I have always, throughout my career, I've always noticed that any program that is considered strategic has to have that impact factor I talked about earlier. And that impact factor has to be, what revenue do we expect? What retention of customers, for example, do we expect? How does that translate into money? So the monetization of the investment. And also, most of these executives, they want to see what is the likely return on investment. If I invest $50, do I get back $50? Do I get back 500? Do I get back 5,000? So never ever put a program in front of your CMO without knowing that he or she will always have to have the monetization conversation. You have to have that conversation with the CFO and with the CEO. By the way, most CMOs are actually very financially oriented. They typically have one of the biggest discretionary budgets in a company. They typically have to be very in detail in managing that budget. And so when you are presenting your programs, you will have to understand what is the likely revenue stream from this? What is the likely retention of revenue stream from this? What is investment needed to get to that? Are there different models? If I invest 50, what do I get? If I invest 100, what do I get? If I invest 200, what do I get? So always, always have that financial element to the presentation of your program. And if it's something that you're not comfortable doing, ask for help. It's actually a great learning ground. Most marketers, be they customer marketers or any sort of marketers, most of them, if they want to progress through their career, at some stage of the game, have to get very financially savvy. It might shock you to learn that when I did my undergraduates in Belfast, I didn't do marketing. I did finance and I did law. And so, this is something that is a skill set you need to have. So it's a very, very good question, Gal, and it's very important. Always get your finance and get your numbers right.
Okay. Well, one more question, a bit off topic, but related. Most CMOs are still oriented to demand generation, right? When you look at your budget in your company now or in the past, again, without maybe disclosing exact numbers, I would assume that still 80%, 90% is honed towards new business, demand generation, brand marketing, etc. I mean, how do you think that customer marketers can help their CMOs and then CMOs inside the entire kind of management suite push the notion of investing in customers? Because like you mentioned earlier on, everybody likes to say they're customer-centric, but not everybody really invests in customer-centric. Or they say, but we have a customer success team. They'll take care of the customers. Why does marketing have to go around that? So how do you think about that balance between taking your budget from, or between demand generation budget and customer and post-sale, I don't know, customer kind of retention budget from a marketing perspective only?
Yeah. Now, so let me tell you something. I love customer marketing. Why do I love it? Because I spent so many years in speech analytics, which is to get the voice of the customer, and in customer journey mapping and customer analytics. So I actually worked on products to help look at the customer. But those years, a few years ago, in those years, I was very frustrated when we would go out with those products to broader executives, and they would say, "Oh, I want to have a customer delight. I want to be Zappos or whatever," but they wouldn't put they wouldn't put the shoulder behind it. It's changing. So you're right. Years ago, when I first started out in marketing, everybody was all about the acquisition of those new logos, and they really did bias their budget towards that. Today, I can tell you we are all getting smarter, and it's good. And customer marketing is a very strong place to be in. And customer advocacy programs are getting better understood. And the folks on this call today who are focusing here, I think it's a great spot for you from a career perspective. But I do believe as well that one of the things that's happened is the marketplace is so saturated, it's actually quite hard to get net new logos. 10 years ago, if you lost customers, you just went out and got more logos. Now we are so crowded, there's so much noise, we have to go to so much digital marketing as opposed to in-person marketing, that the acquisition of a new customer is getting harder and harder. And if you're in a marketplace that you serve where there's a lot of other competitors, it's becoming very tight. So your customer becomes more important. The longer they stay with you, the better their total lifetime value is with you. The more they expand your portfolio, the better it is. All of those things are important. So I can tell you today, as a CMO, that we have changed our distribution in terms of where we put our money to bias it towards more customer investment. I also think that the executives have gotten smarter. I believe we were a little bit arrogant years ago. We thought that if you got a customer, they would stay a customer. But we weren't as good as at putting the investment in. Now things have changed. We've got a lot of people going from buying products once and then that was it, they bought it. Now we have people who are subscriptions. I mean, if you've got a customer who's on subscription, guess what you're doing? Every time that subscription comes up for renewal, you're reselling that customer. And it doesn't just happen magically. If the product's really, really good, people love the product. But largely speaking, we always have to invest in, are we getting them more value? Do they see the value of using the product? Are we bringing them more innovation? So I think it's changing, Gal, and I think it's the right time for it to change. And I believe a company that is not looking towards investing in customer marketing deliberately, in a very methodological way, they're missing. They're going to lose those customers, and they're going to then have to try to play catch up. So in 2021, if your CMO and your company is not supporting you, putting more into customer marketing, you have to wonder what's going on, because they should.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so again, I encourage everybody to ask more questions. So we'll have a few more questions at the end. I'd like to share just a few tips from what we've seen, and I think it actually aligns with what both Helena and Anna shared with us. So first of all, I think it kind of touches to what Helena and Anna mentioned. Start with, what are my company's goals, right? So basically, if my company needs help with sales, new business, then I'm probably, as a customer marketer or as an advocacy manager, looking at stuff like sales references or market references, reviews, use cases, and I need to double down my effort and my programs on that. And when I go to management and talk about why we're doing those programs and what we budget those programs, I can say, but hey, those programs are helping us get new sales, and I know that that's a company main objective for this year. If your company has issues with onboarding, adoption, education, your customer marketing programs can help with that. Customers can give you user-generated content about how they adopted, they onboarded, what they think should be your education better. And then you could utilize that content and share it with new customers as well. So you could help with that initiative. If your company, and I think that also relates to Oliver's question on that later, if your company, for example, is saying, hey guys, we need to double down on upsell, cross-sell, expansion, retention, even if they expect customer success to own that or fail to own that, think, how can you as a customer marketer and advocacy manager run programs that support that? And again, then when you come to the table with, this is my program, this is the top line objective, we're tying it to expansion, we're tying it to upsell. Nobody in the program would not listen. Nobody in the program would say that, not in the table would say that's not important, because you tied it to a company aim, to a company objective. Same thing with, if companies want to have more data. Anna mentioned that she worked in a data company, so companies want to understand better their customer journeys, understand better their engagement. You could tie your programs into that. And that's kind of high level of how you can think between, what is my company's pain, what programs align with that thing. Even if you're passionate about something else, maybe you're passionate about customer advisory boards. Okay, great. Okay, how can I tie customer advisory board to those initiatives or those pains of my companies, because if you can't tie it to that pain, then you think about the metrics. So, okay, I tied it to a company objective. What are the metrics that my company wants to see on that objective? If it's upsell and cross-sell, it's of course sales. Same thing with new logos. But if it's, for example, onboarding and adoption, maybe the percentage of customers that finish onboarding faster or finish onboarding at a certain level, that's what you're measuring. So you don't need only to look at your KPIs, how many applicants do I have, or how many customer stories have I done. Those are advocacy or customer marketing KPIs, and they are great. But you have to also tie KPIs to those company objectives, those company goals. That's the one thing. And then other recommendation, you basically can, once you know your objectives and your KPIs, you can start thinking about your plans. So is it an year-round initiative? For example, if we want to have new logos, and one of our biggest initiatives is around getting our name strong on Gartner peer insight, whatever, or the quadrant. It's timely. There's a time where in your industry the quadrant happens, and that's where you're going to focus on Gartner. You might focus in other months and other review sites because to get those lead generation initiatives. If you're talking about upsell, it is an year-round thing because normally your contracts or your customers' contracts end. They don't all end December 31st. They end in different dates, and that's why you have to have these triggers when contracts end or when there's the time to do retention, upsell, expansion, etc. Right? But you need to think about, can you tie programs together? Who are you targeting in these programs? Right? Who do you need to collaborate inside the company? Before you come to the C-level with your program, ideally you should talk to your counterparts, maybe customer success, maybe community managers, maybe directors of sales. You want to have them backing your program. So again, if sales need more sales, and you can understand they have a problem with references, you want to talk to them first. Get their buy-in to have a reference program, and only then come to your manager and ask and say, hey, 2021, we're launching a reference program, but you know what? Joe from sales agrees with me, and let's start bringing them in. So, or if your program is again about upsell or expansion, you want to bring in customer success, and same thing. Here's what customer success agree with us on why we should work on this together, because that's again another way for you to get buy-in, to get budget, get approvals. And the last thing I would touch about this topic is that ideally you should build a business case, because like I mentioned, there's a whole issue of numbers, budget, revenue requests, etc. And the best way to do it is just to put it on a spreadsheet, Excel, whatever. So what you can do for business case, and we can share with everybody later on if you want to reach out to us, we have this Google form where we ask you questions, and the output of those questions is kind of an Excel business case that you can build. But basically, it's number game, right? There are two main things where you can share in your business case. Money you save, that's great, but people are so cost saving, but most importantly, revenue increase, right? Because so cost saving, again, user generated content maybe costs you $1,000 to generate, outsource, I don't know, a blog or a piece of content, and $5,000 to create a customer video. But now with user generated content, you could save on both of those. You can have kind of homemade customer videos, especially COVID time, and also customer generated blogs. You've just saved whatever, $6,000. That's great, but that's kind of not the big bucket of money that marketers, that CMOs, or definitely CFOs are looking at. The bigger questions is around which type of new revenue you influence, and then you just need to do the math. How many referrals can we generate from programs? How many leads would we generate from review sites, and how many of those would convert? And you can work with marketing, demand gen, or with sales to break down those numbers. If we do an upsell campaign, how many customers can we upsell if we do like the campaign in general versus just the activity that customer success does one-on-one? So breaking down each one of the programs and activities and trying to number it, number of outcomes we're going to have. How much is that outcome value? Referral is the easiest example, so let's use that. Of course, if you do 10 referrals, and in general, 30% of referrals convert, referrals have higher conversion than Customer referrals have higher conversion than regular leads, so 30% convert. So out of 10, ideally 3 would become customers. If your company's annual contract is, let's say, $30,000, that's $90,000 from 10 referrals, 3 converted, $90,000 new business, right? So that's how you should build that type of business plan. And again, if you want help with that, we're happy to help. And that's the last thing I would say, then you tie it all together. You basically take the company objectives, the KPIs that you can show on those objectives, the resources you're going to need to meet those objectives, whether it's people, tools, whatever, budget for events, it doesn't really matter, and the business case. And now you have most managers, when they see that you're aligned with their objectives, you have clear KPIs, you know the resources you need and why you need them, you can show them the business case. That's, I think, 80% of the process to getting that approved. Looping influencers, very important. You should find an executive sponsor. And I don't know what Anna thinks about this, but the executive sponsor doesn't have to be your boss. It's great if it is, but an executive sponsor can be chief of customer, like the chief customer officer, even if you're in marketing. The executive sponsor could be VP sales, even if you're in marketing, because maybe it helps them. So very important to find a champion, find an executive sponsor. And I think, yeah, with that, I would stop here and I would open it to more questions. Just to tell you that, of course, we're going to have more webinars coming up, but we'll get to that later on. So any other questions that we have, let's start answering them. Okay, so back to Oliver's question. And again, Anna or Kalina, feel free to answer this one. Oliver asked that, he said that it seems that, at least when Kalina talked, your customer marketing programs were related to new logos, right? But he was saying, what kind of programs do you think that work, and which type of goals would you have for retention marketing or adoption marketing or upsell marketing?
Yeah, that's a good one. So right now, what I'm strategizing on is specifically on adoption and expansion, but really looking at our executive sponsors. So right now we have raving end user fans, so like people that are constantly in the product every day, which is great. However, they're not the individuals that sign the check. So what I've been focusing on is a suite of executive programs. So thinking about our executive briefing center, even though we're in the times of COVID, we could still do executive briefing meetings virtually. So looking at that process, how can we get the right executives within an account on a call for, let's say, an hour or so, where they're actually working with us. So they come with their layout as to what they need to accomplish for the year, with their goals and what's keeping them up at night, and why they have selected the chosen product. But then on our end, we're doing our homework from a Asana perspective, figuring out, well, here's what we know we can do for you, and here's what our product is going to look like going forward in the next month or 6 months, you name it, and proposing to them, here's how we think we can align with you to make sure that you hit those goals. I think that having a structured layout to where, if you look at your top, I don't know if you have like a top 25 set of customers that you want to focus on with adoption and retention, or is it your top 50? I would really work directly with whoever maybe it's your head of revenue, your CRO, whoever that might be, but understand what's their book of business. And I think is the best question you can first ask to that CRO. And then understand, based on that, what's the revenue that they need to bring in when you look at adoption and retention. And based on the select accounts that they show you, that's how I would look at each quarter. Can you have an executive briefing meeting with those accounts? Maybe you have 25. So let's just break it down in quarters. Maybe one quarter you just commit to saying, I'm going to give you 5 executive business reviews, and out of those 5, within the next quarter, you should be able to expand and guarantee that company is going to sign again or renew, or saying that based on the information that they gave us within that executive briefing meeting, we can actually expand with this account because they're looking for X, Y, and Z, and we can get that. We can build that for them, even if it's a pilot. You know, just understanding what they actually need, I think, is the biggest question with adoption and retention. And so the best way to do it, if you need information, is to build a program where they actually tell you the information and they feel vulnerable enough to tell you, here's what's keeping me up. I need you to help me with this. So I would say executive briefing is one thing that I'm really working on, and making sure that we have a rhythm to where it's not just a one-time executive briefing meeting, maybe like for a quarter, but actually putting it in place where the sales executives understand that they need to shape up their account and actually propose to customer marketing or customer advocacy and say, you know, Oliver, I'm ready for executive briefing meeting with X, Y, and Z account, and here's why. And then on the back end, from a customer marketing or customer advocacy perspective, we have the process design, you know, we have the strategy, we have the program. We're just now putting it into place because the AE has now confidently said, I need this now, and I need it by this time because I have a contract that needs to take place at a certain time. That's one key thing. And then also the customer advisory board, I think that that's the best thing when you're thinking about expansion and retention and adoption, because, you know, a customer advisory board is no more than 8 or 10 individuals, but they're the right individuals. If you think about how much revenue you're bringing in with, say, your top 10 accounts, you know, that might be the bulk of your entire business. But if you can get one executive from those 10 accounts that's bringing in the $1 million for you, if you can get them to have buy-in and have one-on-one time with your CEO or your CRO or your CMO, just imagine what that retention will look like. It's going to be easy because, number one, that executive trusts you, and you're in the back of like that executive, the product is in the back of their head all the time because you're a partner. They rely on you, and not just in a sense of a platform, but in a sense of they can call that executive, that CEO, and actually talk about investments. They can talk about, let's say they're getting ready for their next round of funding. A lot of times they can connect with that right suite of people that can steer them in the right direction. So I would say that that customer advisory board is more than just thinking about, hey, I need to sign this check, or I need them to renew or stay, you know, get another 3-year contract with me. In reality, it's like, no, if they're part of that customer advisory board, they will never leave you, because it's not just about the product, it's the relationship now.
Okay, Anna, your thoughts?
So what's interesting is, you know, at Radware, we actually have and are a very customer-centric organization. It comes right from the top. It comes from my boss, our CEO, Roy. And so we always have had this, first of all, we've had a love of customers because they've been, you know, they're very good to us. We stay very close to our customers. They give us a lot of feedback on the product, etc. We build relationships. But what has changed is we're becoming more sophisticated. We want to become more programmatic in making sure that we reach out to that very big customer base across the globe. And to what Kalina said, of course, there's different levels of relationships. And to the question that was asked by Daniel, you know, customer marketing is not just about acquiring those new customers. It is about retaining. It is about reducing churn. It is about the cross-sell and the upsell. And we actually have metrics for all of them. We watch carefully and we report across our company. How many customers have we acquired? How many customers have we retained? If we have had churn, at what percentage and where and why? And let's see what we can do to stop it. How many customers have we expanded our footprint into in terms of our portfolio? How many customers have we been able to have join us either on a cab or as a reference? You know, we have customers who go to Gartner Peer Insights and rate us as fabulous. We have customers who speak to Forrester. We've customers, you know, these are all things that we measure and we monitor. But it's a sophistication of now making it more programmatic and more unified across the company, so that our support team who's running the communities, our cyber and threat intelligence team who's sending out information, our R&D team, our product management team, that we're all coming together in this programmatic way. And something you mentioned earlier about companies and about these programs is having an executive sponsor. And actually, I have a colleague, our Chief Business Operations Officer, and she has really been a huge advocate for customer experience across the company, and she's helped us unify and drive the company towards these metrics. But Dana's question is very, very correct. This is not one dimension. You have to look at all dimensions. And by the way, all of those dimensions can be tied to money, to revenue, and to the bottom line, which is, of course, very, very important.
Right. And love the two, actually, you touched two different aspects of, for example, retention or upsell marketing. Kalina touched like key accounts and those, 20% that make 80% of your revenue with ads and with strategic programs and those. And then you're saying, yes, we have those, but we also need to look programmatic and scale and talk about all our customers and all our users. And we can get upsell programs because customer success does one-on-one, but customer marketing does one-to-many. So customer marketing can run upsell campaigns or expansion campaigns one-to-many alongside executive boards or executive briefings or those key accounts and getting more share of wallet from them, and then alongside customer success work. Yeah, we can answer the last question, which is actually more tactical by Ursula, and she's basically asking, how do I find the best way to identify my first 50 to 100 advocates and begin to engage them? So it's not related specifically to your program. Say, I'm launching a program next year in 2021. How do I know who are my first, advocates to bring into that program? Maybe Kalina, you want to share your thoughts on that? Let's do Anna as well if you have.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I would ask, number one, if the team actually uses their CRM, so let's just say Salesforce, what type of data is in there? Because you can easily have a report ran for you to show the current advocates or like who's done a case study, who's been engaged, someone like that. But most companies, Salesforce is a little clunky, you have it, but all the information isn't in there. That would be the first one. But if not, I would just go old school, create a spreadsheet and actually get the right stakeholders. So anyone that is customer facing with an account, have them actually jot down their top 10 or, top 15, whatever it might be, and actually have another column that states like their title and then another column that states how engaged are they. I love to do like the red, green, and yellow layout. Green meaning like highly engaged. You can definitely send an email to them and they will respond. Yellow, if it's like, they will respond, but we don't know what we can get from them. Red being, hey, I've never talked to this person a day in my life, so at least you'll know how what you're working with. I think that's a good starter. You could rely and actually do a task with the customer success department and also the sales department, and actually just have them plug in all their information, and at least you'll have a baseline list. And I think that when you feel confident about that list, the best thing will be to do your first email. Maybe it's a customer newsletter that you send out. Make sure that you have the unsubscribe thing option for them, but at least the people that open it, you can understand that here's your potential advocates. And then from there, I would actually start putting that information in your CRM so you can start to grow from that. And then that can be a report that you run monthly, so you can actually track if you're getting new advocates or not, and what's going on with that account or with the accounts.
I'll give you a very quick example of something we did, and very, very quickly, since we're over time. We actually sent an email out. This is not in my current company, but in a previous company where we had not as mature a customer advocacy program. We sent an email out to our sales reps, and we said, go ahead and send us over the names of the people you think would be customer advocates and why. And we made it a bit of a competition. We gamified it, and we put up the results as to how many sales reps were able to send over 3, 4, 5 people. And then we asked them to do the introductions. And success breeds success. It's really funny. First of all, a little bit of competition is good fun, and sales teams love competition. So we got the names in, then we had them reach out to those folks. We got early stage customer advocacy teams coming together. And once people saw the momentum building, then we were able to use that to help go forward. So don't be afraid to send out an email and just get folks to nominate the people. It's those who speak to them who know the likelihood that they will join your customer programs. And they're the ones who will get you very factual information very quickly.
And I would just add to that, if you have data about people who are engaged in the product, power users might be likely also to be advocates. If you have people engaged in your community and contributing to the community, they also might be likely to be advocates. But yeah, I think when you combine everything that Kalina and Anna was answered, you kind of have at least a way to start. So with that, we'll end. Thank you everybody for staying. Thank you again, Kalina and Anna, for sharing your knowledge, and Noah for helping us wrap this up. And let's all have a great 2021.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.